All right, so have you heard this story about a chef, this high-profile restaurant, and a refusal of service? It's a really wild one. You might have seen the headlines, Chef Antonio of Le Magnifique, this like super upscale place turns away Barron Trump. The internet exploded, but what a lot of people didn't know is that there's this really deeply personal story behind this very public act. We've got articles, we've got interviews, even some social media analysis, and we're going to unpack all of it all today.
Yeah, it's amazing how this incident sparked such immediate judgment and just outrage online. Everyone seemed to pick a side before the whole story even came out.
That's it. That's exactly it. That initial reaction is definitely something we're going to dig into today. But first, let's set the scene a little bit. Okay, so we're talking about Lemoness, one of those restaurants where reservations are made months in advance. The wine list requires a decoder ring, and the clientele includes celebrities and politicians. Okay, then Barron Trump arrives with his security detail. Can you imagine the atmosphere?
Oh, yeah,
Then?
totally. You've got this collision of power, wealth, social status, all under one very expensive roof. It's almost a recipe for drama even before you consider what actually happened.
Okay, so picture this. Barron Trump is seated, menus are in hand, and then Chef Olivier, which is Antonio's real name, by the way, just refuses to serve him, just flat out no.
Yeah.
No explanation, no negotiation. Can you help set the stage for us in terms of what might have been going through Olivier's mind?
It's important to remember that we're not dealing with just a disgruntled employee here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There are layers of personal history, maybe even some psychological stuff at play. Olivier's actions seem impulsive, but they're really rooted in something much deeper. So we later learn about the tragic loss of his son, Luca, years earlier. Now, how does the appearance of Barron, the son of a pretty polarizing political figure, trigger that past trauma? That's where it gets really interesting.
Right, because it wasn't actually about politics for Olivier. He later said, and I'm quoting here, "Every time I see his family's name, I'm reminded of the grief I can't escape." It's almost like Barron unwittingly becomes this living embodiment of Olivier's unresolved pain. But how common is this kind of reaction in people dealing with a profound loss?
It's more common than you'd think. Grief, especially unresolved grief, can show up in unexpected ways. We often associate it with sadness, but it can also trigger anger or guilt, even a sense of injustice. And sometimes, as in Olivier's case, it latches on to seemingly unrelated events or individuals.
Okay, so we have this chef acting out of deep personal pain. Of course, the public doesn't know that yet, right? All they see is this very public act of what some people might call disrespect, maybe even discrimination. What kind of impact does that immediate reaction have on the whole situation?
That's where social media comes in. This wasn't just a local news story. It was an instant global phenomenon. You had people praising Olivier for, taking a stand, others condemning him for his actions and everything in between. It was a perfect storm of outrage fueled by algorithms and preconceived notions.
Yeah, it's almost like everyone projected their own political leanings onto this incident, regardless of what was actually happening.
Exactly, and that's where the danger is. This rush to judgment, this need to take a side, often prevents us from seeing the nuances, the human stuff beneath the surface.
And in the meantime, Olivier is dealing with the very real consequences of what he did right. The media frenzy, the potential legal problems, not to mention the impact on his staff and his business. What's going on in his head at this point?
Well, you have to imagine he's going through a whirlwind of emotions. Regret, guilt, maybe even fear. But here's where the story takes a turn. Instead of, doubling down or going silent, Olivier confides in his sous chef, Maria. She's a crucial figure in this narrative.
Right? Because Maria isn't just an employee. She's someone who understands Olivier, right? She sees beyond his, gruff exterior. She encourages him to actually confront his grief, to acknowledge the pain that's been driving his actions. And this is where we finally get a deeper understanding of Olivier's backstory.
And it's a pretty heartbreaking story. We learn about Luca, his son, his infectious laugh, his love for soccer, all the little details that bring him to life. And we hear about the accident, the guilt Olivier carries, the missed opportunities that haunt him.
And he blames himself for Luca's death. He says that he prioritized his career over his family, and that guilt, that unresolved grief, becomes the lens through which he views the world, particularly when Barron Trump walks into his restaurant.
Yeah, it's a potent reminder that we all carry these unseen burdens, that our past experiences shape our actions in ways we might not even realize.
Okay, so we have Olivier wrestling with his demons, and then there's Barron, who's suddenly in this really public, very uncomfortable situation. What's his immediate reaction to being refused service? You'd think maybe anger, embarrassment, even demanding an apology. I mean, he's a teenager in a very public situation.
Yeah, and especially with, the added layer of his family's political baggage, the situation could have blown up pretty easily. But what actually happens is kind of remarkable. Like, he stays composed. There's even a hint of understanding in his reaction.
Yeah, and it's not just from Barron either, right? Like his security detail, who, are trained to react quickly to any possible threat, they stay calm too. It's almost like they can sense that this isn't about disrespect, but about something else entirely.
It definitely points to some emotional intelligence, wouldn't you say? To be able to assess the situation like beyond what it looks like, especially when you're under pressure. And this is where Barron's reaction gets really interesting. He doesn't act like the victim, he doesn't demand any special treatment, he just leaves.
And he doesn't just leave. He says something really insightful before he goes. He says, holding on to that pain forever won't bring anyone back. I came here to eat, not to make enemies. What do you make of that, knowing what we know about Olivier's struggles?
I think it suggests a level of empathy that's pretty rare, especially for someone his age. Remember, the public has no idea about Olivier's grief, so Barron's words seem even more profound. It's like he just senses there's something more to this whole thing.
Which brings up a really interesting question about forgiveness and understanding, right?
Yeah.
Does Barron walking away, choosing to not engage, does that play any role in Olivier's eventual transformation?
For sure. By not escalating things, by offering that gesture of peace, Barron kind of creates the space for Olivier to reflect, to face his own, issues. It's like he disarms Olivier with kindness, so it makes it harder for him to hold on to the anger and resentment.
And then get this, to make things even more unexpected. Barron does something incredible. He sends Olivier a letter, a handwritten personal letter.
Yeah, this is where the story shifts from public spectacle to private reconciliation. This wasn't some PR move. It's a genuine attempt at connection.
And what he wrote is just as powerful as the gesture itself. He says, Dear Chef Antonio, I don't know your story, but I could tell you were hurting. I hope one day you can find peace. You remind me that everyone has something they're carrying. Take care, Barron. Just simple, heartfelt, completely disarming.
Yeah, think about how those words must have hit Olivier, who's already dealing with, guilt and shame. This is the guy he wronged, reaching out, forgiving him, acknowledging his pain. It's huge.
It's almost like Barron's letter cuts right through Olivier's defenses and forces him to confront his actions and the depth of his own pain.
And it's not just about Barron forgiving Olivier. It's about Olivier forgiving himself, too. That letter starts him on a path of self-reflection. It's a turning point on his road to healing. It's a great example of how forgiveness, both given and received, can be really transformative.
Okay, so Olivier's world is rocked, his defenses are down, and now he's got a choice to make. Double down on the anger or embrace this chance for redemption. What happens next?
So instead of lashing out or retreating, he does something pretty amazing. He makes a public apology, takes full responsibility for his actions, and acknowledges that he was unfair to Barron.
And it's not just some quick statement to the press, right? It's heartfelt. He talks about his own struggles and how his actions impacted others.
And now the story shifts from this personal conflict to societal reflection. Olivier's apology goes viral, starts all these conversations about forgiveness, second chances, and the dangers of judging too quickly in a world that loves social media outrage.
It's not just about a chef in a diner anymore, right?
Mhm.
It touches on something way deeper, something that resonates no matter what your politics are.
Exactly. And this is where Olivier's transformation takes a really big turn. He doesn't just apologize. He decides to completely change his life, his restaurant, his whole approach to service and hospitality.
So he realizes that the exclusive high-end world of Le Magnifique, this world that he built with so much ambition, doesn't fit with his values anymore.
Yeah, this isn't just about rebranding. It's a total transformation of his purpose. And it's fueled by that guilt he has over prioritizing work over family, over losing time with his son.
Wow, so from this public conflict comes something new, something unexpected. He closes Le Magnifique and opens a community restaurant called Luca's Table.
Bold move, definitely lots of symbolic and practical challenges. Can you tell us more about this transition and his vision for Luca's Table?
So he's closing down this fancy place and creating something totally new. What was he thinking? Was it all about making up for what he did, or was there something more?
It's a lot of things, really. I mean, there's the part about honoring Luca's memory. Of course, Luca's Table becomes a way for Olivier to channel his grief into something good, something that celebrates his son.
Yeah, like creating a living memorial, a place where Luca's spirit can kind of live on through kindness and community.
Exactly, but it's also about addressing a need in society. Olivier realizes that the world he was in, that world of exclusivity, is so disconnected from the everyday struggles of so many people. Luca's Table is his way of bridging that gap, of offering a place where everyone is welcome no matter what their background is or how much money they have.
It's a huge change going from like high end to serving the community. How did he even do it? What does it take to turn a fancy restaurant into a place for everyone?
Well, first of all, the menu change is completely right. Gone are the, intricate, expensive dishes. Now it's all about simple, wholesome meals using fresh local ingredients. He also sets up a pay what you can system so people can contribute what they can afford and no one is turned away.
So it's about making it accessible, the food and the whole vibe of the place.
hmm
Did anyone push back on this? Were people like, is this even going to work?
Oh, yeah, there were definitely skeptics. Some of Olivier's old customers didn't get it. And of course, there were money problems to figure out running a restaurant, especially one like this is not easy.
But it sounds like Olivier was determined to make it happen. What about Barron? Was he still part of things at this point?
Absolutely. Their connection goes way beyond that initial forgiveness. Barron starts coming to Luca's Table regularly, not as like a celebrity, but as a real supporter. He volunteers, helps with fundraising, even brings his friends and family to experience the place.
It's incredible how their relationship changed from conflict to this unlikely friendship built on shared values and doing good.
And their bond helped Luca's Table thrive in ways neither of them could have imagined. Barron being involved brought media attention, which brought awareness and new customers. But it was more than that.
Like, what do you mean? What else did their connection bring?
It made things feel real authentic. People saw that this wasn't just some publicity stunt. It was a real effort to create something good, meaningful. And that really resonated with people.
It shows you that a genuine connection can overcome differences even in a world that feels so divided.
For sure, and as Luca's Table became successful, it also became a target, right? Some people criticized Olivier for using Barron's involvement. They said he was exploiting the situation for attention.
So even with all the positive stuff, there were still people who focused on the negative, the controversy, instead of the good.
It just goes to show you that even the best intentions can be met with negativity and distrust. But Olivier and Barron didn't let that stop them. They were committed to Luca's Table and what it stood for.
They faced it all together, showing that a true purpose can withstand anything.
And over time, Luca's Table became more than just a restaurant. It became a community hub, a symbol of hope and second chances.
It's really a powerful example of how we can turn pain into purpose, how we can connect and forgive and create something beautiful out of conflict.
Yeah, it reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can make a big difference. It can start a chain reaction that we might not even see. It makes you wonder, what kind of world could we build if we all embraced the spirit of Luca's Table? If we all looked for ways to connect, to forgive, to give back?
Wow, that's a powerful thought. It really makes you think about the choices we make, the impact we have on each other, and what we want to leave behind. This deep dive has been amazing, full of surprises and a powerful message of hope and change. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep looking for those unexpected connections that make life so incredible.